Can you name me 5 Italian Renaissance artists? Chances are big that the names like Da Vinci, Raphael and Michelangelo come to mind, and possibly names like Botticelli, Donatello and Titian. But when asking this question to some of my friends, no one mentioned Sebastiano del Piombo. And yet, he was one of the greatest artists of this period, with his sensual and spiritual art. Italian Renaissance art can be divided in 2 different schools. One is known as Colorito, which refers to the Venetian artists who were inspired by more colorful Byzantine art, and as a major trading city, they had access to the most beautiful pigments. The other school is known as Disegno, which refers to the Florentine artists who specialized in the drawing and design of their works to make them look as naturalistic as possible. Now, Sebastiano del Piombo grew up in Venice and embraced the Colorito school. But in 1511, when he was 26 years old, he was one of the few Venetian artists who left this city to go to Rome, where the Pope gathered the best artists from the country. And in Rome, there were many Florentine artists from the Disegno school, most notably Raphael and Michelangelo, and they were fierce rivals of each other. After the Pope had recruited him to come to Rome, he would have the opportunity to work alongside Raphael, and soon after that he would become good friends with Michelangelo, something that was pretty rare by the way. So with his Venetian background, having learned from artists like Giorgione and his exposure to the best Florentine artists of the day, Sebastiano was in a unique position to combine the best of both schools of the Italian Renaissance. And he had a particular talent for producing spiritual art, like this painting of Christ carrying the cross. A real test for Sebastiano came around 1517, when future Pope Clement VII wanted to commission the 2 best artists of the day to make a painting of the same size for the Cathedral of Narbonne. One of them was Raphael, who made the Transfiguration, and the other one was supposed to be Michelangelo. But as he was busy with other things, he agreed to make the drawings for his painting, but have Sebastiano paint the work. And he would paint the raising of Lazarus. So let's put the 2 paintings next to each other. Which one do you prefer? Back in the day, both works were received with great enthusiasm, but Raphael's painting was mostly preferred. The reason why? Well, there are multiple reasons, and they're emblematic for why Raphael is famous today and Sebastiano not so much. Sebastiano started working on his piece, and by the time he was finished, Raphael had just made some sketches. And in fact, Raphael was only planning to paint a scene related to the top part of his final painting. But he was very much aware that his competition was a way to publicly judge which of them was the best artist. So when Raphael saw the spectacular work by Sebastiano, he decided to extend his own design and add all the disciples at the bottom and brighten his colors. Raphael went all out to win this competition, and many consider this the best work he ever painted. And it didn't help Sebastiano that Raphael died just before completing the entire painting, making that work even more legendary. When Raphael died at age 37, Sebastiano del Piombo was now considered the most important artist in Rome, and not for a shortage of competition. His innovative works and portraits were highly celebrated, but he has not kept this prominent place in art history. Let's go back to the beginning to understand this a bit better. Sebastiano was born around 1485 in Venice, and he started his training with one of the best local painters, Giovanni Bellini. After that, he probably trained with the revolutionary artist Giorgione, who would change Venetian painting forever through his poetic works. And when Giorgione died way too young in 1510, Sebastiano was perhaps the best artist in Venice, producing works like this one of Salome, the daughter of Herodias, holding the head of Saint John the Baptist on a platter. And when the wealthy banker of the Pope came to Venice in 1511, he was proud to tell the Pope that he had convinced Sebastiano to come to Rome. He immediately received commissions almost similar in prestige to Raphael and Michelangelo, and he had the opportunity to see their works and become friends with them. In his way of life, he was a bit similar to Raphael, as he liked to party and spend time with the many prostitutes in Rome, and in terms of his artistic vision, he was equally daring. But he lacked one thing that Raphael and particularly Michelangelo did have, which is a good work mentality. He did not see the need to be very productive, and unlike the big personalities of Raphael and Michelangelo, Sebastiano was more modest. In other words, he did have the talent of one of the greatest artists in history, but he did not have the proper work mentality to consistently deliver on his talents. He was happy to make enough money to live a comfortable life and spend lots of time with friends, instead of building a legacy by painting many works and training the next generation of artists. And so after his death, his works were not as sought after like those of Raphael or Titian. One of the consequences is that his works have not been preserved that well over time, and many of the works I show in this video look a bit old and not as colorful and crisp like this renovated work of the Martyrdom of Saint Agatha, which he painted in 1520. In Rome, Sebastiano married, and they had 2 children. He had left his wild years behind him, and he stayed close to the Pope. In 1531, there was an opportunity for a well-paid job at the Vatican. There was an opening to become the keeper of the seal of the papacy. This basically meant that he could authorize any official documents of the Vatican. In Italian, this was called the Papal Custode del Piombo, and that is why Sebastiano got his name Sebastiano del Piombo. It was a very lucrative job, and you were appointed for life. One little complication of this job was that you had to be a friar, so despite having his wife and kids, Del Piombo took the vows as a friar. And with a very nice salary, he did not have to spend as much time painting anymore, and his output decreased significantly. Though he would still produce some works until his death in 1546, like this lady as Saint Agatha. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story about one of the forgotten talents of the Renaissance period. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button, subscribe and hit the notification bell to support the channel. And as always, feel free to leave any comments related to Sebastiano del Piombo or topics you would like me to cover in future videos. Thanks for watching.